Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and we are back. I'm with Coach Jill.
Hello.
Wow, that was so extra. I was not ready for that hand motion.
Well, I'm doing it for the YouTube because
there we go.
Listen, YouTube probably gets more less views than the podcast. So come over to YouTube for the awkward hand gestures.
And just us being awkward in general. So we wanted to talk today about off-season weight gain. And the question we get so much from clients, especially when they're first starting a reverse, is how much weight should I gain in the off-season? Or how much weight should I be expecting to gain during this reverse? And we obviously understand the question.
Yeah.
I get why people ask, because let's be honest, most people who are going to hire a diet coach are going to be very goal-oriented people, very organized people, so they want numbers, dates, timelines, but
they want the details.
It's really hard to give a response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this kind of falls into that answer. It depends.
The good old.
It depends.
I should just carry cards with
me.
We
should just make a T-shirt with little handguns. It depends.
And then the Italian hand.
Oh yeah. Perfect. Chef's kiss. Mwah. Anyway,
you guys really need to watch this YouTube video. Also, we chose a new background. I'm pretty pleased with this.
Yeah, it kind of
a new office. Yeah, it's a little dark and mysterious, a little masculine energy. All right, we're gonna keep. Wow. Okay, back on track. Off-season weight gain.
Yeah.
How much weight should you gain? So we broke this into 4 different parts. And the first question you really need to ask yourself or your coach or the conversation that's happening. Wow, my handwriting, guys, is so bad. I actually scratched it out. That's why. When was the last time you dieted? Quick recovery from me. When was the last time you dieted? And we're going to break this up into 2 parts. We're going to break this into a contest prep dieting answer and also a lifestyle diet answer. So let's kick it off with the contest prep answer.
Well, contest prep is obviously the more extreme end of dieting.
Much more.
Yeah, much more extreme. And, I would say one point here is, how long is your contest prep? And again, levels of leanness when we get on stage are going to be different for people, just depending on, what's realistic and attainable for some. Body composition, is it your first time competing? How long have you been training? So stuff like that. But, competition prep for most of our clients is going to be, at least 16 to 20 weeks long. And that's a pretty long dieting phase. Some people go longer just because, hey, like me as an example.
Awkward laugh. But also just multiple shows, too.
Yeah, multiple shows play into that, too. Especially if you have a plan for the season, you plan on hitting the national circuit. All that stuff plays into, entering that reverse diet and, again, kind of getting to a good maintenance phase post-show. And I would say that, when we're transitioning out of that phase, it's more of a sensitive period of time where, of course you're going to be curious about, where I'm going to end up. I spent all this time dieting, I spent a very long time being lean, which can make this process harder for some to kind of cope with, and that adds into the question, hey, I just need to know, what to expect. And, it can be a really hard thing to kind of figure out as you kind of make this transition into an off-season phase. So I would say...
The number is hard to give. There's not really a number, but the most important point of a contest prep transition here is where you're at, even if you weren't as lean as you wanted to be. No matter what, if you are dieting for a competition, you are too lean to stay there. So you're going to have to gain weight. And the biggest difference here between a lifestyle diet and a contest prep diet is, for a lifestyle diet, you might have been, say you were starting overweight and now you've dieted down and you're actually at a healthier body weight. We're going to try to maintain closer to that. We might not stay there. We might, go a little bit higher and then have to come back down later. But we're not trying to gain all that weight right back.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
But competition prep, that is a very unsustainable, unhealthy body fat level, and you can't stay there. So when people say things, and this has been going around forever, we should probably do its own whole podcast on this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be 10 pounds above stage weight. You know, that whole kind of mindset and whatever. And it, first of all, it's a bag of shit. So don't listen to anybody who says that. You know, what is 10 pounds to me is very different than 10 pounds to you.
Like someone else's body. Exactly.
Hello. Right? Like literally just
we're like
us two in the room.
Two different heights.
Completely different
body
bodies.
compositions. It's
no.
Yeah.
So I'm 40 pounds more than you. You know what I mean? Like it's not even the same playing field. So like, how would you say like?
How would you say that this is the standard post show? You can't.
You can't. So, but the one thing to understand when you're talking about gaining weight, you know, when people are doing competition preps, we get so. It can be really hard to detach when you're in that period.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, I feel fine. But it's like, hey, remember last week when you like told me like you really couldn't sustain this?
Yeah, when you like, you know, blacked out in a day after a nap. You kind of don't realize the differences in how you feel when you're so into it and so deep into it. You know, it's funny because I notice like with my prep clients when we're a few weeks out of the diet, they start to realize like, wow, I feel like normal again. Yes. You know, wow, I feel like so good. Like my energy is up. Like I haven't napped this week. Like those things you don't really realize because they kind of become part of your norm when you're that lean.
And that's part of doing a competition prep, right? Like you have to understand when you go into it, that is part of it.
Yeah. And that's one thing to remember when going into this off-season phase. So like you don't want to feel like that all the time. You know, I was at a point in my prep where I had like a daily nap because you know my energy just was not there.
What time was yours?
Oh my god, it was like I feel like it was between like 1:30 and 2:30.
Okay.
Like right as I got home from the gym, like after I ate, and I was like, I gotta die for a minute, and then I can go back and get my day going again.
Yeah, I was always like a 4:30 napper. Like
sometimes it was around like 4:30.
It would just be this like a train came and like took me out, and I was like
I couldn't keep my eyes open type of thing. Like I need a power nap, and that's how I can finish off the rest of my day.
So there, you know, of course that isn't an answer as far as how much, but every client's can be very different. Putting a number on it, I think, is actually very detrimental as well.
Oh yeah.
But understanding there's a huge difference between somebody who's dieted very extremely low body fat levels versus somebody who's dieted to a healthier body comp. So that distinction needs to be made. So you need to ask yourself that question. And then the second part is, okay, what is your dieting history like? Is this the first time you've ever really seriously dieted? Is this your 20th year of dieting, right? Like, I mean, these are serious questions that you need to ask yourself, and you need to understand, okay, do you even have an idea of what your maintenance is?
Yeah, have you spent any amount of time not dieting? Do you have any kind of idea of like where you would normally sit or like what body composition you feel good at? Those are all questions that you kind of have to ask yourself. And a lot of people unfortunately don't know this information because, you know, we have a lot of clients who come from periods of, you know, hey, I spent like a few years in a deficit, you know, restricting their intake, and they have no idea where their body kind of levels out and where they feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that either. We were just talking about this beforehand. Like, I had been, you know, for early on in my life, I was always weight restricting, food restricting, and then, you know, I got to a healthier place, but then after, you know, aging and building muscle and kind of all that, like once I got to that place, then I started competing, right? And then so really the only time that I had off was periods where I was considered off competing, which I would just gain a bunch of weight in a short amount of time, and then I would diet again, right? So I never really was at a weight stable position because I wasn't putting myself there. So after my last season in 2018, I said, you know what, like I'm done for now, and then I'm just going to kind of get back to a normal level. I don't know what this is going to look like or feel like or be on the scale, but I'm just going to do it. And now I'm at a place where I'm basically 2 years removed from that. Actually, I have 2 years this weekend. Holy shit. And I'm, you know, I've settled at a weight that is much higher than I was previously, but I actually look better now, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Maybe. You guys let me know. But I feel like I'm at a better body composition. I have more muscle mass. And most importantly, I feel stable. You know what I mean? Like, things are much more stable on all fronts. Of course, everybody has days where they're more tired, or they have days where they're up and down with their mood. That's normal. But I'm talking about like those chronic issues that you deal with when you're not weight stable. And I really didn't even know that. And that's what I was like, I just weigh so much more than I ever have. He's like, well, you don't know what you should weigh because you literally never allowed yourself to just be at a weight.
Sit and just hang out there.
Yeah, and if I would have see, like, this weight that I'm at now is very similar to the weight that I was at after the shows, but I look very different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting how that all works.
Yeah. And that's something we kind of just come and see as we, hang out in the off season and, watch things stabilize. It's going to look different on everyone.
And also weight right after. So I always talk to clients about this too. Like, as soon as you're done with the diet, right, and you gain, let's say you gain 10 pounds, the proverbial 10 pounds, right? But let's just say you gain 10 pounds. And it might stick kind of different right away, especially right after a competition diet.
Yeah.
It's going to sit differently. And then you might really not change weight that much more, but you're just going to start to look better at a certain weight. You know what I'm saying? So like weight is something to track, of course, but it can be very deceiving, especially after a very rigid diet. And where you kind of settle is going to look very different, 1 month post-diet versus 4 months post-diet, just as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
I've
noticed that with myself too.
Yeah, I mean, you too, like, both of us.
Exactly. I feel like I've come to a place where like, oh yeah, I like how I look here, it's comfortable, and I don't have like a time. How long has it been? I feel like I haven't even checked in with you in a while.
Hey everybody, this is Julie's check-in, so we all need to get on our
calling myself out on the podcast, but it's been a while, so that stuff takes time.
No, and you're feeling much better.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to do another podcast on Jill's dieting history, so stay tuned for that. Which actually leads right into this kind of a podcast. Mm-hmm. And then another question you need to ask is, what is your training status, right? So are you building muscle? Are you new to training? Are you coming off of an injury? All of these things will influence your weight. So let's talk about building muscle. Obviously, if you build muscle, you're going to gain weight.
Yeah.
Hey.
That's how it
works. I think everybody knows that, but I think we forget that.
Yeah.
Because literally, somebody could gain several pounds over, a few months, and they're like, I don't understand why the scale's going up. I'm like, you look so much better. Like, you're so much denser. Like, your muscle has improved. Like, you've literally gained weight because you've gained muscle. And of course, when you gain muscle, you also gain water. And there's so many things involved there, too. Which is why, when you are injured, or you stop training, a lot of people will actually drop weight. So, so whether that's an injury, or whether that's just, hey, like, I have to take a break from training, or whether it's COVID, you know what I mean? Like, people have been training at home or training with weightless equipment. Some people saw a drop kind of immediately because their muscle mass is changing, or their water retention is changing, or their glycogen storage is changing because doing at-home workouts, it's going to be different, right? Or say you were in an injury period and now you're back to training and your weight's shot up and you're like, why did I gain weight? It's like, this is good.
Hey, you're sore. It's more inflammation. That's totally normal.
Yeah, and hopefully we've gained some size back.
Yeah. And that kind of stuff bounces back rather quickly when we get into stuff like that again.
Oh, for sure. I mean, unless you've taken, 3 years off. I mean, that's going to be a little bit different story. But if somebody's taken, a few weeks or, even a few months, but if you've had a base, it will be easier to come back. And so you should expect weight to go up if you are gaining muscle or, changing your training from an injury status or whatever. So that's another thing, like, that will influence how much weight are you going to gain in this period. And then the last question you really need to ask yourself is, does it matter? So we're going to talk, of course, about a few different points here. One, we can refer to the scale podcast, because me and Karina did a podcast on that. What is the title of it?
Are you scared of the scale?
Yeah. Are you afraid of the scale?
Fear of the scale or something?
Something around being afraid
I did
of the scale.
Podcast.
Yeah. I'm like, Jill, anything going on up there?
Not right now.
So we did do a podcast. We don't know what number or the title, but just search through and it'll present itself. But we talk all about what could be fluctuating on the scale as far as like the actual number.
Yeah, the ins and outs of weight fluctuation, pretty much.
Yeah, so we cover all that, but then what we want to talk about here is, does it matter as far as, okay, are you obsessing over the scale in a way that like you want to limit how much weight you're gaining, just for a pure like obsessive reason? Do you want to see a certain number, like, hey, I don't want to go over 140? Have you basically conditioned yourself enough to think that I need to weigh a certain amount, or are you looking at like how much weight are you going to gain from like a health or a kind of performance perspective?
Yeah, and I would say that, a lot of this could be influenced just because, people spend so much time sometimes being stage lean, and they may think that I just don't want to look different. And that's kind of where, again, you have to take a step back and look at, how you're feeling, because obviously feeling the way you do deep into prep isn't ideal. Then here we have to kind of step away from the numbers. Again, kind of referring back to that scale podcast, why is it that you don't want to go over this weight? Is it because you associate something bad with this number? Is it because you don't feel like you should be over that weight? Do you anticipate, that looking a certain way once you hit that number? I've seen people literally freak out about, going from maybe 129 to 130. It's even less than a pound, but something about that number just
it's a new threshold.
Sets them off. It's a different threshold for them. And if we take a step back and I tell you hey, you gained half a pound, that could be nothing. That could be water overnight. So looking at, those reasons is really important when we kind of transition in this phase, just because we have to be realistic with the fact that you cannot stay stage lean. And it's one of those things you kind of have to embrace when we make that transition in the off season, because it is going to depend where we level out, but that's kind of why we like to take this process slowly and give ourselves time to stabilize post-show. I'm not sure if I touched on everything there, but
yeah. And then I think so. There's a few other things too, right? So for certain performance-based athletes, there's going to be weight classes, right? And if you are very competitive, I will say this, okay, for weight class athletes, most people don't need to cut weight for a weight class sport. Sorry, you don't. And if you're very good and you are close to hitting, certain, records or certain whatever, maybe you can do that, right? If you're just starting out, you don't need to cut weight. But if you've gotten to be a little bit more serious, and you've really, you've progressed, sure, you can cut weight for your event, whether that's a powerlifting meet or, jiu-jitsu match, whatever the hell it is, maybe you need to cut weight. But you really need to figure out, okay, are you cutting weight, how are you doing that, right? Because you see people do these weight fluctuations, and weight cutting is very different than losing body fat. So you can actually do a very severe weight cut without any diuretics, without any drugs, and bounce right back. But most people, don't do the bounce back right, so then they kind of, jack up their event, right? So weight cutting is a totally different thing, but you need to also take inventory. Okay, is this weight class? Wow, why do I want to mix class and cut, and it's just not working.
Are we speaking German now?
Hey, I know 3 words in German. Everybody, do you guys want to hear? Just kidding. It's really embarrassing. So sometimes on the app you have to speak into it now too. I've gotten to that point, and I'm oh my god, do I try to pretend I'm trying to learn German, guys. All right, it's really fun on the side. Neuroplasticity. But back to here. So weight cut athletes, and look at your weight class. See, okay, is this actually feasible for me? Have I outgrown this? Is the next class, only a few pounds different? Is that going to be better for me? So you really need to look at that.
Weigh the pros and cons there.
Weigh the pros and cons for your, your performance stuff. And then also, for certain people, and I've had a handful of clients like this, currently and previously, with maybe some joint issues, right? So if somebody or old injuries, or hey, I had a knee replacement or whatever it might be.
Being able to function the way you want to day to day.
You might need to be at around a certain weight because of health and because of the impact that it has on your joints and kind of moving forward for your health. But for the amount of people that affects, so small, and really those fluctuations are going to be pretty dramatic. It's okay, hey, if I'm up into a certain point, this is fine, then over that, I'm not going to feel too great. So you really need to look at, okay, when you ask this question about how much weight should I be gaining, we need to look at so many of these facets. Okay, where are you in your diet? Did you just finish a contest prep, or did you just finish a lifestyle diet? What does your diet history look like? What's your training look like? Are you just starting? Are you gaining muscle? Are you coming off an injury? And also, we really need to be realistic with, does it matter how much? And for most people, it doesn't. For most people, we're dealing with their health, we're dealing with their body comp, and we're trying to balance both things. And in order to do that, you don't need to be a certain weight. Do you know what I mean? It's all about how somebody looks, how somebody feels, it's what their blood markers look like. And obviously we're not talking about if somebody is overweight and has health problems. This is not, if you need to lose weight there, that needs to be taken care of. if you're very severely underweight, you're gonna need to gain weight, it doesn't matter how much. But we're talking about pretty much everybody else, kind of in that middle ground of like health, body comp, and all of that. And how much the number on that scale matters less. And just be prepared for it to really fluctuate. And again, clients ask this because they want to know what to prepare for. And most people who are coaching are those type of people, and I get it. But it's so interesting because, like, and I had a client ask me this the other day, like, do you see, like, what kind of weight trends do you see in the off season with people? Because a lot of podcasts, and you know, us too, like, we're guilty of this. Like, you talk a lot about weight trends when people are dieting, and a little bit less in the off season. Like, I feel like we're doing a better job with that, and we try to put out content on it because it's where most people are at. Like, most people are only dieting for a short amount of time. But in the off season, it's so interesting because I feel like people, it's not very linear. So some people will kind of just slowly add more weight. Other people add weight and then it stops. And then they add it and then it stops. And then some people can do all of that.
Yeah, some people drop a little bit some weeks because of external factors. Maybe they're stressed, maybe they're busy, something happened with work being crazy. Sometimes it plateaus, sometimes it goes up. It's really,
there's a lot more variables in play when you are at maintenance or maintenance plus calories, right? When you're dieting, it's a little bit different, and it's a little bit more
controlled.
Yes.
You have more variables basically in your control when you're dieting, especially for a show. We have everything on point. We can really see what caused what. In the off season, we have a lot more factors at play.
Which is why we ask so many questions with our clients' check-ins. It's not just like, hey, what was your weight? Tell me what you ate this week. That's not enough.
Very surface level.
It's so surface level, and we would be making erratic changes based on that. So that's why we ask, okay, sleep, hydration, where are your menstrual cycle,
stress,
work changes, digestion, like, have you gone to the bathroom, how was your training? And, like, there's so many different things. And then if somebody tells you, like, I didn't drink any water, I barely slept, I'm on my cycle, and I got hurt this week, okay,
super sore.
We're gonna see
lots of things.
Crazy weigh-ins. So there's a lot here, and as always, there's no real direct answer, but you really need to, if you're a coach or as the client, like, you need to have this conversation. And it's, it's not enough to just say, like, oh, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, like,
but
stay this amount over your stage weight. That's not realistic for the majority of people.
Giving somebody a number often is more detrimental. And it's actually even hard to give people a stage weight number.
No, yeah,
for the same reason.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, you can try and think of a number, maybe subtract 10 from that number, and odds are you'll end up somewhere around there. But it's even at that point, it doesn't even matter how much you weigh, because when we're so close to show, we're looking at how you look.
Every client holds weight different. We have a few clients competing next weekend, and I'm just hearing the weights, and they're all different sizes, but you would expect the weights to be more similar than they are. You know what I mean? But they're not, because everybody has a very different structure. Everybody holds weight and stuff. And people are like, how does that make sense? It just does. And half of, all of this is, like I said, we're like almost 40 pounds different. Would people know that? Like, maybe not. Like, does it matter?
And if we go over like, oh, this is my stage weight and this is where I'm at now. It's like, none of that really matters. Like, it doesn't translate from me to you the same way.
And now, of course, there are considerations for for a competitive athlete. Do you want to be so far away from your stage weight that, like, you're losing all your muscle to, like, diet down? That is one consideration.
That's one thing to.
But it's, I find that most people aren't there. Some people are, but that's usually from a rebound from a show, and then they're probably not even ready to do a show.
Yeah, and I think one thing to keep in mind is, like, I think some people are scared, like, oh, well, like, if I reverse, am I going to end up at the same starting weight that I was at?
You might.
And you may not. It's really something you kind of have to gauge as you go along,
And that's the whole point of coaching, is to coach people along that journey, instead of just being like, yeah, eat this food. Because
it's like not like we can set, like, oh, we're going to go from point A back to point B, and you'll be at this weight at this time. Like, that's nothing we can actually predict.
I know. It's really hard, and I get it. People want answers, but the best thing to do in that situation, like I said, ask yourself these questions, be very honest, and then every week during your feedback, be detailed with your feedback, and be detailed with what you're looking at, and then you'll have a better picture. Oh, okay, like, I saw what was good this week, what went wrong, why it might be influenced, and that really kind of paints a better picture of the scale. And like I said, also check out that scale podcast, which we don't know the name or the number, but you'll see it.
Just look for Karina and Laurin and Gillian.
Yeah,
it's got to be one of those, right?
One of those. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you have any questions, you can let us know. You go to teamlocofit.com to check out the other articles that we've written, podcasts, apply for coaching, etc., etc. 10-star reviews only, you guys know. We greatly appreciate all of those, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.